we're delighted right now to introduce everyone to our keynote speakers, Jason and Tracy Binder. And boy, this is a really interesting topic. They founded Aware Coaching, and it's dedicating to helping couples survive and grow from the trauma of brain cancer. In February 2022, Tracy was diagnosed with glioblastoma and with a primitive neuro component, GBM-PNC, a rare and aggressive brain cancer. Despite the daunting prognosis, Tracy and Jason faced this challenge with unwavering faith, resilience, and community support. Their journey through multiple surgeries, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, and the emotional toll of the diagnosis has profoundly shaped their approach to their marriage and parenting. They understand the immense strain a brain cancer diagnosis can place on relationships and are committed to providing the support and tools necessary to navigate these challenges, which a lot of times people don't really talk about this topic. And so I'm really happy today that the End Brain Cancer Initiative can bring you, make you aware of Aware Coaching and make you aware of Jason and Tracy's tools that they're going to provide all of us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Deanne.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the invite and the opportunity. It's happy to be here. Sorry about that. All right, we're ready. So I'm Jason.
Tracy.
And we're really excited to be here and talk a little bit about our story and talk a little bit about how, we use our life coaching background to not only work on our own marriage, but we'd love to be able to also shepherd and shoulder with those who need what we know, and just be there as a support to do some of those hows. So like as Deanne said, like we all know the thing, but the how and the execution of that thing is sometimes a blind spot. So back up, all of us who have had brain cancer, there was a life before that, right? The life that, as we grieve, we don't get back in the same way we had. That's still hard. So in 2020, this was us, 2 years or almost 2 years before the diagnosis.
Yeah.
This pretty much represents the chaos and crazy of our family. We don't necessarily pose well. This is probably the best picture we got.
I just say this is amazing.
Yeah. And Tracy's always the star, so she looked great in this. And we would have been married 20 years in 2020. We decided and felt called to make adoption part of our story. So we had 4 biologic kids.
And yesterday we got from the court in Wake, we got the final. Like he's on his way.
It's going to finalization. Only 4 short years since this happened.
Yeah.
That's been under the current as well.
Yes.
We decided to buy 15 acres on the edge of Greensboro that was just briars and garbage, and create our dream house and farm. And as it says at the bottom, rich, full, and fast. So a full-time husband, full-time dad, now with 5 with a newborn. At that point, it was 20 years in pharma, so clinical research in oncology and digital health was where I spent a lot of my time. I was an elder at church. I was a life coach among couples, men, in terms of marriage recovery. And just talk about you.
I was a full-time wife. I'm a mom, life coach, cross-country coach, a runner. I did it all.
How many cross-country teams were you coaching?
I coached 2. It was amazing.
And how many miles a week were you running?
A lot.
Our puppies just came in the door. Our children had one job. But yeah, so you can see like active family, definitely we had lots going on. We had a lot of dreams too that we intended to live out, right? And then on February 6th, 2022, and I had to put, that was 29 months ago. So like, yeah, that's right. That aggressive brain cancer was a 9-month prognosis. Um, you know, I had COVID. She was having headaches. She thought she had COVID. On that Sunday, I took a family to church with us who had never gone before.
And I decided to go to a kind of hospital.
Yeah, like a local ER clinic.
And they didn't even have anything. They had like a CAT scan, I think.
Yeah.
And they scanned me and they were like, we think you have something in your head. And I'm like, what? So they kept my IV in, they had me call Jason, and here we are.
Yeah. So this was less than 6 weeks after moving into that house. We spent a year painstakingly designing in every little detail with all that life unpacked. And we were faced with this. I got this phone call and I was like, oh, I got kids, I'm going to the doctor because they found something. I don't know what it is, but we will be sure to let you know as we go on and keep you in the loop. Um, as this happened, the primary emotion was definitely numb. A lot of background noise. Yes, let me just ask the children to take the shot. But numb was the primary feeling. And I tried to ask ChatGPT because I'm figuring out how to use that. What does numb look like? What does numb feel like? And I thought this was a great representation. Isolation, you know, blurriness, a sea ahead of you that's uncharted. These were all the main feelings of numb that I experienced as we journeyed into this. And because I had several community circles, and we'll talk about how to do that in a minute, I reached out to my community within AstraZeneca. So I was an employee of AstraZeneca that does lots of oncology R&D. And I reached out to the head of commercial, the head of R&D, the CEO, who's one of Time 100, the head of clinical operations in oncology. These are all presidents, SVPs, and said, hey, we got looks like we have a brain tumor. We don't know what it is. Who do I need to talk to? And within minutes, those people had already connected with other people, and we had the folks that do the Clinical Research Institute, the Friedmans on the radar, and then through our church circles, we had a fellow in one of our community groups who had worked with the brain surgeon Wake, and within less than 24 hours, we were on his calendar. And we met with him and he spent an hour with us. So the community that I had, I leveraged by asking questions and seeking guidance and help. All right, so sorry.
I'm so sorry about that.
One job. So this is the bit of the story in terms of 2022, we in that local hospital, I asked questions like, well, what do you think she needs? And like, oh, she needs brain surgery. And, and I was like, oh, what's that entail? And he had the audacity to talk about how big the scar would be and where it would be. And then I asked him, well, how long have you been doing this? And he said about 6 months. And at that point I knew we needed to run. And we did. And like I said, we had Duke, we had Wake, both in our backyards. Large academic research institutions that have the expertise, especially as something as abstract as brain cancer, has to be something that the community knows needs to be the point. And I know that everyone will have access to that, but that's an important thing I'd want to make sure to convey to y'all. So why don't you talk a little bit about what our journey was in treatment?
Yes, surgery 1. That came 10 days after February 6th. And that was great for 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks later, surgery number 2 came.
Yeah. So the reason that happened was, and as you in rare disease, diagnosis is a very challenging thing. I was surprised by that. I didn't realize that. The surgeon told me he would diagnose bedside. And he called me and said, yeah, I've done the pathology. I don't know what it is. It looks like it might be that, the GBM with the PNC or PNET. And, but he didn't want to concern me because that's not what he could absolutely say. But that was also the worst possible outcome. So we prayed for every other outcome that this could be. And while we waited for them to do the pathology, the tumor recurred. And while we had geared ourselves up for surgery 1 and felt like we beat it, surgery 2 took every piece of energy out of our soul. So they rushed her right into radiation.
Yep. Within days.
Days.
Yeah.
And you had 30+ rounds of brain and spinal cord radiation.
That was awful.
What were some of the impacts of radiation?
It took all my taste away. It took everything tasted like metal. It was awful.
Yeah.
Nothing I could say great about it. And it kind of took you down.
Yeah. Do you remember that summer?
No.
How was your appetite?
Awful.
How many pounds did you lose?
15.
15 pounds. And we finally just gotten back to pre-cancer weight, 29 months later.
Exactly.
And we got a something just appeared in our my chart one day, and it was our diagnosis. Mayo Clinic had done a genetic test and identified the tumor as molecular glioblastoma with PNET features or PNC. And then obviously because I have the awareness of oncology and R&D and started doing the research, that was the last time I ever did that because the data was so poor and there was such a small subset of data that it wasn't anything that was going to be giving hope. So I chose at that point for us that we were not going to be part of the median and we were going to continue to fight. And she's a fighter. So talk about chemo.
We had 6 rounds of chemo. There was 1 each month. It was like for 5 days, I think.
Temodor, yeah.
Yeah. And I did pretty good. And then I hit like 3rd day and I was done.
Yeah.
For like, 4 or 5 days. And then it came back up. So it was kind of like this.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the middle there, I got an Optune.
Before that.
Oh, before that.
In the first round of chemo, what happened to you?
Oh, I got shingles. Forgot about that.
She got shingles.
I kind of forgot about
What was more painful, 2 brain surgeries or shingles?
shingles.
Right. And this
Jason and Tracy, I
Yeah.
want to let you know of the time. And I know you've got also some really interesting, helpful tools to share with us today. So I want to make sure we do get to those.
Okay,
Yes.
no problem.
No worries. We're going to transition now. So this is a little bit about our story. And then what we decided was as we came into 2024, what was going to be our purpose, right? And we had this life coaching background. I finished seminary. I wanted she was coming back into energy and Tracy. So we thought about supporting marriages again that went through brain cancer. And as we did the research, we realized that, when she's the patient and whatever couple this is, the rate of divorce and separation is 6-fold. Like that's massive. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, what are the dudes doing? And it suggested that there was a lack of commitment. I think it's a lack of coping. And then that's where we can come in with coaching and helping that. And it even says that, if you can identify the discord and you can bring in life coaching, not only do you keep families together, but there's a quality of life and a quality of care and health outcomes that are connected to that, which shouldn't be underestimated. So what is the thing that we're going to focus on to keep marriages together? It's around emotional intimacy, right? Because the emotions are going to be sky high. The emotions are going to be really low. It's going to, grief is going to sideswipe you and blindside you, and you're not going to know which way is up. But what you need to be able to do is articulate where you're at, because the greatest need besides being healed of brain cancer on a daily basis is to be fully known and fully accepted within yourself and with your spouse. And you can't really enter into that if you can't articulate it. So we teach folks how to connect your feelings to your circumstances. And then also how, and in doing so, when your spouse begins to articulate those things, you can connect more deeply. Because as you go through life and you go through brain cancer, it's easy to kind of start just being the caregiver and not doing the connections and just meeting the physical needs and getting the right doses of the thing. And and then you just kind of start separating, and then you're on parallel tracks. And then eventually there's a big gap. And in that gap of frustration as a caregiver, you can have bitterness sprout, right? And I'm sure we all can feel those things when you're just so frustrated. And then resentment can happen. And obviously, she never intended to have breast cancer, but this is the human nature that we have, is like kind of that why me, right? So what are the tools we give you? The greatest tool we ever had, and I have one on my wall, and she gave one to me years ago. That was this one, but on the other side, she put fine, sure, and good, because that was my emotional language. I had 3 words, and then got frustrated if she would push on that even further. But we teach folks to be able to articulate the emotion you're having in the situation you're in, identify shame as feeling overwhelmed incompetence, which you imagine you could when I just saw the stuff that Shreya put on there. There's so much content to consume. You're going to feel stupid about what's going on, and you're going to miss the right question at the right time. Insignificance, it's just you and your family against these huge health systems. And how do you have a voice? You're going to feel really small. And that's going to also be some of that shame that makes you feel like it's impossible. And then lastly, the data sucks. So you're going to feel powerless to change that. So between those 3 naming those shames, we can then translate that into, what do I need? Well, I need peace. Well, what do I need? I need acceptance. I need reassurance. I need a break. And sometimes what this does in terms of brain cancer, whatever was already underneath the surface is just going to get exacerbated. And if that's unhealthy coping mechanisms, those are going to get really big. So we suggest finding deeper, healthy intimacy with God, within yourself, and with others in a way that allows you to have healthy coping, because this journey is hard. So moving right along. This was what life looked like. So I put the schedule in the top left, and I had antibodies just looking at it because I can't do schedules anymore. I literally shut down when someone's asked, what time should we do that? But these are all the different activities that we had going on for our 5 kids. It was triathlon, soccer, and gymnastics. And we were going to church, and we had all the checkups at the hospital that's 30 miles away, and they had to go to school and do their homework, and someone had to help them. And like Tracy said, the adoption was still kind of slowly meandering. So this is where the 3 and 12 come from. So this is a faith-based theological approach in terms of Jesus having the 3. So he's got John, James, and Peter are the ones he's closest to, that he asks for prayer, that he brings them the transfiguration, that they are living life day to day, minute to minute, and that's where, besides your spouse, they're getting all the details. So I got 3 guys. I'd be texting them, hey, today's terrible, I feel this way, or today's great, keep praying. They knew what was going on with me. They were checking in on me, and they were my 3. And then our 12 was a community group that we had within church, a group that we had within all the sports and with schools. And those 12, they multiplied each other. So I had the 3 who were just keeping me afloat, keeping me pointed up. Tracy, you had 3 as well, right?
I had 3, yeah.
And who were those?
Anna, Charlotte.
And they were like your running buddies,
Yeah.
and you did the same thing with them, right?
Yes, it was great. Yeah.
So you need to have the 3, and those are the people you're going to bring in the most. Those are the ones going to point you towards health, empathize. And then those 12 are the folks that, we built this new house that had 800 feet of mud to the main road. a truck just showed up and started laying gravel. Like it's probably over $10,000 of gravel and different types of getting it the right layout, the right crown. They just did it. We had a stick barn that wasn't done in the backyard. Carpenter just came out and finished it. We didn't ask. We were napping while these things happened. I put lift on here. More of like, people took our kids to school, they brought them home. They took them to practice, they brought them home. Like that lasted for over a year. I just gave one of the moms like, yeah, please just schedule it. And I had to trust that they would not take advantage. I felt very vulnerable that I just didn't know where my kids were all the time, but I had to trust that the people in my 3 and 12 could take care of our family. And then the meal train, people made meals and lunches and dinners for us for months and months and months, which means that Tracy doesn't like what kind of food anymore.
Chicken.
She doesn't like chicken. She doesn't like Mexican because we're gluten-free and everyone believes that's Mexican, so you can't even smell that anymore. Then I've got diapers on here. One of the schools has brought us, a year's worth of diapers. So that's the 3 and 12. How do you get the community? You have to be plugged in somewhere. We were plugged in at church, we were plugged into our activities, we were plugged into the school, and then we had to ask for help. And people want to meet the need. You just have to give them the entry to that.
Jason and Tracy, it's time for questions and discussion from our audience. I have a question, if I may ask it. Also, I just wanted to remind everyone, if you would like to use your chat session, I will monitor that and I will provide the comment or the question as well. But can I go back, please? Because I know this is a very important topic and you're planning to help couples talk together and talk about and discover that love language, right? But something you said is really important, and I don't want to leave it off the table. We need to be able to call out our shame. I want to talk about that a little more. Shame, we know what shame is, but what do you mean when you say we need to be able to call out our shame?
Yeah. It's those three things around overwhelming incompetence, high insignificance, and impotence or powerlessness that overwhelm you in those moments. Because those are the things that are going to trigger something in your past story that's going to drive you to those negative outcomes, those negative coping things. That's not going to bring you two together. It's going to put you apart. And that's for her as the patient and me as the caregiver. Like I want her to be dumping that emotion out. We want to put grief on the table and see it for what it is and not let it rule us. So that's what I mean by shame.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering about, to be honest, in a marriage or not even in a marriage, sometimes when you're diagnosed with brain cancer, both the patient and the care partner, caregiver, spouse actually does feel shame. Do you address that when you're counseling couples?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to get them to figure out how to know that that's even happening. Sometimes it's hidden from them. It's a specter, it's a shadow. That's why our coaching is more, it's not just us having a set of skills. We have the story too. And we know, I know when I see it, I can figure out the words that they're using. It's just like, I just can't figure this out. And I always feel so dumb and like, oh, okay. Like there's a shame moment. Let me help pull that thread a little further and then let you know, yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And maybe some of that shame, if I'm listening to you correctly, is just lack of information and it's lack of confidence too, because this is new.
Absolutely. And then the tall order of navigating the system, you have to wait for hours sometimes and just feel like no one cares about your time. Who cares that, she's feeling so ill just even being there. And then you get the MRI and you you have to wait for the results and you're powerless to what it's going to say. And then it comes back and says, it could be nothing and it could be something. So, make sure you watch that space.
Yeah.
You also said we need to strengthen healthy coping habits. Okay, so we need to strengthen healthy coping habits. How do we do that?
So first, maybe let's define unhealthy. So a lot of folks, might be going to a screen or a bottle or a substance, or allowing an emotional boundary to be broken by having someone just be nice to them, right? So those are some unhealthy things to watch out for. Healthy coping for you is what?
I don't know. Running.
Running, exactly. Yes, running. Healthy cooking for me is going out to the farm and watching the clover grow and seeing how the rotation's going, walking the dog, taking my kids to activities. Like those are life-giving things to me. It takes energy and effort, but it's life-giving. So those are healthy coping. Other ones can be, from a spiritual perspective, prayer, scripture, those are things that are important to us. We're in a community group of other believers who share their own struggles. And we think about, physical, you talked about running, eating well, things like that are all good coping mechanisms. And those can be things that we, maybe do too much of. So you have to have a moderation to that, but that's what we think about.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. You have a slide, 5 things you can do today to strengthen your marriage. Would you mind putting that up? And we'll talk about those super quick if we could,
Yes.
the items on that slide. I
All right. So the 5 things you can do, so translating the well duh to how, an emotional journal. So we have the tool with the feelings wheel. 3 times a day, you go into your journal, you write, oh, what's my primary emotion? Use the wheel because it'll be really hard. You'll be surprised how hard it is. Write down what it is, and then try to figure out what the why is. What's the circumstance going on? Do that when you get up, do that at lunch, do that before you go to bed. Second is finding your 3 and your 12. Like, do you know who you're like for men, for husbands that are caregivers? Who are your dudes? Who are your dudes who are keeping you straight, who are loving you and need to be loved with hugs and haymakers? And then how are you connected? And not everyone who goes through brain cancer is going to be able to get out there and have social experiences, but like we got to figure out how we can expand those people supporting you, like the army that we talked about. And then grief, we got to be able to identify it, right? So those shame feelings connected to what those grief feelings. I always think bargaining around grief is the one that just totally disorients folks. And, got to say, this is how I'm feeling. This is the grief that I'm going through right now. Let's talk about that. Finding a coach or a counselor who can teach you these things, who can show you these things, and then can empathize in their own story and show you their story so they can apply yours. And then, praying. So like I prayed a ton when we first got diagnosed, and obviously you're a prayer warrior. Now my prayers are just like, please heal her, Lord. And I've got armies of people who are praying and praying and praying, but for me it's like I've kind of prayed myself out. So those are the 5 things I think you could do tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Jason and Tracy. Will you put up your very last slide, please? This is contact information for both Tracy and Jason. They have an amazing website. I do encourage everyone to check it out. That in front of you is also Jason's email address. And I'm curious, you talked about the emotional feeling wheel. Is that something you came up with, or did you find that someplace?
Oh, that's been out there for years. So it's not our work. But it's the greatest tool that most people have. Is like when you ask someone how they're doing, they say good, they say fine. And then when you say, well, how are you really doing? Silence. They don't have the
Okay. I really want to see that wheel. And is the backside blank? I know that Tracy wrote your top 3 feelings on it on the backside, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, it's just one side.
Okay. I'm gonna get that wheel. I want to see that.
You can
I
look it
want
up
to.
anywhere on Google.
Yeah.
What was that?
You can look it up anywhere on Google. Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank both of you, first of all, for sharing your story, right? And secondly, sharing your family with us. And you guys have quite the story. I love that you want to help others, other couples, through their adventure, so to speak, through brain tumors and brain cancer. And so I just thank you for stepping up and wanting to help. Their information is right in front of you on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to both Tracy and Jason at any time. They're willing to help do some counseling. And that counseling is free of charge right now, right?
Yeah, our coaching is free to any couple that has a brain cancer diagnosis. And the way we do that is we work with larger organizations who can invest in that time on behalf of those folks.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Apologies for the few interruptions.
Oh, it's okay. That's life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.